if you're a producer that works with an artist, like you guys are coming up with concepts, you're helping like coming up ideas with the videos, and like you're really working on this project 50-50, then shit, split everything 50-50. And I've seen artists really hurt their own business because they want to hold on to everything. They don't want to give a percentage to every, and I'm not saying you should just give out percentages willy-nilly, but that doesn't mean you don't own your business.
This was an awkward start. Good morning, everyone. Actually, I don't know what time you're watching this podcast. If you're watching it live, it's in the morning, depending on your time zone. So forget I just said good morning. Greetings, everyone. It's DJ Payne One. I'm joined with Dame Ritter, and this is the MEC podcast. I believe this is episode number 45. I could totally be off, though. Once you pass a certain number, it just almost doesn't even matter.
That should be a job of yours, Payne, just to keep track of the episodes and get it right. Because I feel like we were on 45 last week, but I might be wrong.
Hold on. I will absolutely confirm for sure. This is episode 45. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So I take my job seriously. How are you feeling, Dan?
I'm good, man. It's been a busy week. Yesterday, we finally launched Big Jaw's app. So his app is live. So that was keeping me busy for a couple of days, but it'll be dope to build a community off of Facebook and YouTube to help diversify his revenue streams. But you know, the pandemic hasn't stopped the work on my end for sure. So the days are pretty packed, and I'm trying not to fight my girlfriend's daughter every day. But no, it's been cool. We've just been trying to stay out of each other's way because, you know, we're in such close quarters every single day, and it's never been like this. So we're developing a different kind of bond. So it's been interesting. That's
a good way of saying it. I'm definitely developing different kinds of bonds as well, given the fact that I'm locked in I wouldn't say my house is small, but it doesn't matter. It's still one area. So,
right.
And we can't escape. So no matter what, we're stuck here. So with streaming, obviously quarantine has made streaming go crazy. I mean, streaming is now on steroids because it seems like everybody's just flocking to it.
Not music streaming, though.
No, live streaming, video streaming.
Right.
Yeah, music. Do you know if music streaming is dropping still?
I don't know if it's dropping still, but from what I read, and I saw Z from DJ Booth post something, I think that it's kind of like, because weekend consumption was always a little lower than weekday consumption, and they've said that like every day has kind of been like weekend consumption. So, you know, I don't think it's ticked back up since the reports that it wasn't, that it dropped a little. So yeah, music stream. I think we just always need to draw that distinction between when we mean like live streaming versus like music streaming on Spotify or Apple.
So live streaming has gotten some rocket boosters. And I'm not sure whether it's because people are demanding it or because now suddenly artists are providing it and it's a new experience for people. But it seems to me as though from now on, we can't go back. I mean, now that live streaming is so well established, you know, with all the versus battles, with all of the, quarantine radio and similar kinds of concepts that big artists are using now, that interactive component of a music career is just kind of here to stay. Not that other people weren't doing it prior to, quarantine, but I mean, you can't tell me that live streaming was as prominent and as common as it is now. It's not, and I think that it's just going to continue, and we can't all of a sudden, let's say there's a vaccine and everybody's safe in a month. 3 months from now, people are still going to be live streaming because now they're just used to it, and the consumers are used to interacting with musicians and with companies and with public figures in that way. They just are.
Yeah, but it's not. It's definitely exaggerated now. Like it's not gonna. Like for example, as soon as we are able to come out of the house, there's not going to be as many people willing to watch live stream. Now it's kind of like their only option. They're competing with like the Netflixes and the Hulus and things like that. But as soon as we're allowed to come out of the house, now you're competing with live events and basketball games and actual concerts. And like, so it's definitely not going to be as prominent as it is now. Like, I don't think the versus battle is going to be able to reach 500,000 like it just did with Babyface and Teddy Riley if people have other options. It's still going to be, I still think something like Versus is still going to be relevant. And I think they're going to take that off of IG at some point and maybe even put it on television. Matter of fact, the Versus IG page is Versus TV. So I don't know if that's just for Instagram or if that's just kind of letting people know that they plan to pitch it to a network. But I think that the artists that are able to establish like show-like things on Instagram Live, if there's a compelling, continuous live show that you're doing, I think you're going to be able to continue to do that. For the people that are just going on live and haven't really figured out a way to entertain their audience and grow their audience on a continuous basis, I don't think you're going to see the same numbers. And I think those people are eventually going to stop live streaming and going back to doing what they were doing.
Yeah, well, certainly I think because live streaming is now the new normal, a lot is changing, and you're seeing a ton of companies rush to retrofit their platforms or rush to provide sponsorships to exploit the new popularity of live streams. That's why I think it's not going anywhere anytime soon, because people are looking at streaming in a way that they hadn't looked at it before. And artists are getting innovative. They're getting creative. Not all of them. I mean, it is going to be, like you said, it's going to be a select few of artists who are effectively using streaming to the point where now where live streaming becomes part of their branding. For example, Tory Lanez, that quarantine radio was so successful. I'd be surprised if he abandoned it, and I would be surprised if companies weren't rushing to find some way to exploit that and profit from it. Obviously, with Versus, once you hit 500,000 viewers, their eyes are on you. Come on. So I think you might be right about Versus TV becoming less of a live streaming experience and more of a more heavily produced, regular kind of episodic thing.
Well, that might even be the case for Tory. I mean, I see, at that scale, what he's doing, that's like a good audition for TV. I'm sure networks are now looking at him like, okay, this guy is entertaining. He can, draw numbers. I'm sure that he's probably looking at different like show offers now. And if he did get a show, would he continue to do quarantine radio? Like, I don't know. I know when Khaled was, took his whole career to another level doing Snapchat. I don't think he does Snapchat in the same way anymore. Mm-hmm. But, I think this is a great opportunity for artists to figure out a live streaming component to their business. But, there's a lot of competition now with people doing live stream. I mean, I go on Instagram right now and, 20 people are going live that I follow. It's like, who should I watch? Who has something interesting to say? Who has a show that I'm already aware of that I look forward to on IG? That's the kind of way you got to think about how you're doing your live stream.
Well, the concern with live venues and, the traditional live performance, live show paradigm is that you have to wonder how this pandemic affected especially the mid-size and small promoters. I mean, if you were a promoter, if you were a smaller time promoter who, not affiliated with some big company, not affiliated with Live Nation or any large promotions company. How did this affect you? Can you bounce back from this after 4, 5, 6, 7, however many months this takes to dissipate? Are you able to bounce back from that long of a period of time of no income? And I read an article on entrepreneur.com that talks about this whole pandemic probably resulting in a, I guess what would be a more pronounced concentration of power in the hands of very few promoters, because now a lot of the smaller promoters that used to compete and have their own, space in that industry are probably going to be gone. A lot of them are going to be gone.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely going to be the case. So it's going to be interesting to see, but there might also be restaurants that are like on the teetering on bankruptcy, and maybe they decide to open up their space for live venues. It's definitely going to be an interesting space, and there's going to be a lack of venues, but is there going to be people that have jobs that have the money to come out and to support live shows? I'm not sure. It's going to be an interesting space.
Well, yeah, and I think the tragic part, I mean, it's all tragic, but when we talk about the economic impact of all of this, tragically, it's going to affect the people that were just starting to get a foothold at the time of the pandemic, or the people who were established in their industry, but at a much smaller scale, whether that's a venue, whether that's a promoter. And then to tie this back into streaming, I read another article on Digital Music News, and they're reporting that, like I said, because streaming is now profitable, or at least people are looking at it, companies, corporations, platforms are looking at streaming as potentially profitable because of all of the success of things like quarantine radio and Versus. Now they're rushing to exploit it. So this is what the headline read on Digital Music News. Facebook is making changes to its live stream platform to allow artists to monetize their performances. So I think 2 episodes ago, we were talking about how licensing could potentially affect live streaming, because, if you're a DJ and you're live streaming your set, you don't own the songs that you're playing in all likelihood, and you don't have licenses to play that music in the same way that MTV does, in the same way that a commercial radio station does. So this seems like a step in the right direction, right? So, and this is something else that's good, and this is good for us too, Dan. It reads, other changes to Facebook Live include the return of live with allowing co-hosts to join. I don't know why Facebook eliminated that to begin with. That was a really stupid idea. I wish Google would bring it back too, but that's another conversation. And it says, despite the changes, we don't know how the Facebook Live payment system will work or what the commission rates will be. Of course we don't.
Well, it's actually, I don't know, like the pay per event, what that commission is going to be, but they really need to take another look at how they're doing these stars, which is their digital currency, because that pay system is all fucked up. So basically, stars are what you can donate to people that are going live. And sometimes it's even at the bottom of videos. So if you want to donate to a content creator because you saw a dope video, you can donate stars, but you buy the stars first and then you donate them, whenever you want to donate them. So the bottom tier of buying stars, and every star is worth a penny to the content creator. So
what platform is this through?
This is Facebook.
Facebook.
So every star is worth a penny to the creator. So if you donate 5 stars, you're essentially donating 5 cents, but you don't pay 5 cents for the stars. So there's different tiers, and as you spend more money, you get more stars for your money. But the bottom tier, for example, is buying 95 stars for $2. So if you donate all of those stars to somebody, you gave them 95 cents, but you gave Facebook $1.05. So
Which
Facebook,
is well over 50% commission.
yeah, so you're donating more to, like, that's to me is terrible. Like, even at the lowest tier, that should never be the case. But even as you scale up, if you buy, I think, 30,000 stars for $50, you know, you're still giving the content creator $30 and you paid $50. So you're giving Facebook $20. That to me is still a fucked up commission. Like, they gotta change that, you know, especially at those lower tiers. To donate more to Facebook than to the actual content creator is damn near criminal in my opinion. Like, that's ridiculous. So I don't know what the commission split is going to be on like events, but you know, Facebook already has like an option to do like fan subscriptions and stuff like that. As long as your page is at a certain tier, there's a lot of requirements you have to meet before your page opens up for monetization, before you can monetize your videos, before you can get fan subscriptions. They have like branded opportunities at a certain level where they're pitching, you know, things you can do for brands. So there's a lot of ways to monetize on Facebook, but the star stuff, it got me hot because I was like, how are you going to take more than the creator? Like, that doesn't make any sense.
So at the highest tier, you were saying it's something like 70-30?
No, so that would be 60-40.
60-40. Okay, because Twitch is actually 50-50 apparently. It's
I don't like that
this
either.
is from yeah, well, this is, and people,
like.
and we tend to look at Twitch as the fairer platform. Every time I talk to live streamers, they talk about how Twitch is paying, you know, a lot of content creators and making it possible for them to do what they do.
And these ads that they're running, I don't feel like creators get a percentage of that money either. It's just the subscription revenue. And it's I forget what they're called. I think, would she call them emotes? I think Karen called them emotes. Something you can do that are similar to stars on Facebook. There's a similar digital currency. But 50% on the subscriptions, to me, that's whack. And you don't get paid for the ads that are mandatory before people jump into your, you know, into your live streams. I think that's whack too.
Well, okay, so two things to be fair. Well, number one, I think Facebook took that from Twitch, the whole stars idea. But number two, according to Digital Music News, Twitch splits its advertising and subscription revenue both at a rate of 50-50. So
there's another revenue stream outside of the subscription and the donations?
Yeah, apparently it says advertising revenue is included in that. So, I mean, that's good.
That. I have to verify.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just regurgitating what I'm reading off this article. And then it goes on to say that YouTube, and this is surprising, that YouTube is more generous and they have a 70-30 split, which is cool. But then it goes on to say, and of course we know this about all of these platforms, you need a YouTube channel with over 100,000 followers. I guess they mean subscribers, before you can use the channel membership feature. I feel like I can use it, and I'm like at 89,000 or something.
Well, there's different features, right? Like, so there's different ways to monetize on YouTube as well. What they might be referring to is just the super chat feature, where people can just donate money. And even though 70-30 is better than, you know, these other platforms, I'm still fighting 30%. Like, if people are just donating money to you and YouTube's taking 30% of that, like, that's still whack to me. Like, you know, and of course, if you're a content creator and you are letting it be known that you're accepting donations, just make your Cash App and your Venmo visible. You know, but like, you know, when Big Ja goes live on YouTube, he's not there to request money. So he doesn't put his Venmo or his Cash App, anything like that. People just start donating to him because they appreciate what he does. So they're going to use the super chat feature. And for YouTube to take 30% of that, I think is whack. Like, if it's just straight up donations, in my opinion, like 20% should be the most. Like, but I'm still thinking like 10%, because this is just a straight up donation, appreciation for the art that you share with your fans. I don't know, that split just seems off, and over 50% is way off. So I
Sure,
hope.
and that's why it's clear to me why there are so many digital tipping and fundraising platforms, because a lot of these content creators are not getting great splits. I mean, if you can just donate to someone directly through PayPal or something, as frustrating as PayPal is, they're only taking 2.5% or whatever their rate is, which is way smaller than 30%, way smaller than 50%, and obviously a lot smaller than 60%.
Yeah. We just had the vice president of business development from Bandzoogle on Monday, and he was telling me that if you build your website out with them, they have subscriptions built in, they have crowdfunding built in, and they don't take a percentage at all. It's just whatever percentage that the credit card fees take. So, 2.9% or whatever. So I thought that was pretty cool. I haven't really looked into, I've never built out a website on Bandzoogle myself. So I'm not yet waving the flag and say, build your site on Bandzoogle, but that is a cool component of it, because even Kickstarter is going to charge 5%. Patreon, I think, charges 5%. So if you can build that within your website on Bandzoogle and they don't take a commission at all, of course you pay a monthly fee to use Bandzoogle. I think it's like $20. I think it is $20 a month to run your website for the hosting and whatnot. But I think that's something to look into if you're looking to have a subscription business, or if you're crowdfunding.
Yeah, because if you raise, $1,000, you're saving money.
For sure.
If you raise $1,000 on Bandzoogle, if they're only taking 5%, or no, if you're just being charged $20 a month off $1,000, that's a 2% commission, as opposed to a 5% on a traditional crowdfunding site. So yeah, we have options. Some platforms are better than others for crowdfunding and accepting donations, but we do have options, and I would encourage people, if they're going that route, just try multiple subscription platforms or multiple donation platforms, just to see what works best. And maybe you'll find, like when we had Tina on, she wasn't using any of the traditional fundraising platforms. It was all just it was all Venmo and Cash App, and that works for her. So she doesn't choose between either of those. Maybe you don't have to either. It just all depends on who your supporters are and what you're comfortable with.
Right. Payne, I thought you wanted to talk about producers and artists and negotiating beat sales. Isn't that something that you wanted to jump in? Because I know you had some back and forth last week, and we were going to talk about it last week, but we had Tom join us. Is that something that you wanted to talk about before we close out today?
Want is a strong word. What I didn't want to do is turn the podcast into just the producer takeover, because I did want to talk to lawyers. I'm not trying to just be up here talking about what's legal or what's fair without some lawyers present. I like having them around so they can share their experiences and their expertise. But just for a couple minutes,
doesn't necessarily require. Everybody's allowed to have their own opinion on what's fair, and that's kind of what leads to a lot of this drama. On one hand, there's a lot of miscommunication and misunderstanding because people are not on the same page from an education standpoint and don't understand things that are objective. But then on the other hand, there is kind of like just a disagreement on what's fair and who's contributing what and what is the value of contribution, right? So I think that's another layer of things that can cause issues.
Well, that's a good segue then into what I'm about to ask you. So, Dame, you ran a record label for a while. You had producers who were being contracted to produce music for your label. how did you work that out with them? Given that you were the label, obviously you were investing money into marketing the music. And as you saw on my social media and on the MEC social media, when people find, when especially recording artists, rappers, singers find out that in addition to, paying a producer to compose a record or produce a record or compose a beat, that producer still gets a writer's share or maybe, royalty points, so a split of the master royalties, they kind of freak out and say, well, why am I paying you again? Which isn't really an accurate statement because you're not necessarily paying them again. It's just a matter of, to me, it's a matter of experience. But with you on your label, you were paying. And so the other narrative is that if the producer isn't marketing the record that they produce, they don't deserve any royalties. How did you treat your producers when they would, from a legal standpoint, from an intellectual property standpoint, when you contracted them for a beat back when you ran Funk Volume?
Sure. So, initially, we didn't know what we were doing, but like Hot produced all his stuff. So it was just like, he owned it anyway. And he owned the label, we both owned the label. So, we didn't really have, and we should have had producer agreements in place. But, this is early days when, I wasn't really familiar with what we were supposed to do. And then eventually when we got producers on board and started working with other producers, we kind of just followed the model that the major label industry set, right? So we would pay a producer fee, and then we have a producer agreement in place. We would pay in advance. The producer would transfer master ownership to us. In return, they would get half of the publishing and 3% royalty rate. But then, we've experimented with other ways too, because sometimes, 3% isn't a lot, right? So, I think the producers should always get 50% of the publishing, maybe with some exceptions here and there. There could be some, unique circumstances, but for the most part, producers should get 50% of the publishing. And then on the master side, there just needs to be a conversation on what the advance should be. If it's a situation where there's no advance, then what the percentage split on the master side should be. So I've worked it out before where it was 25% on 1 week notice. I think we worked it out where it was, I want to say 20%. But there's a lot of different variables to come to an agreement on what is fair in that situation. So I'd like to hear your feedback on what I just laid out and say, okay, would you have a problem with, how I looked at things in the past?
Well, the way you're looking at things in the past is you're judging things on a case-by-case basis, but in every scenario you described, there was some kind of sharing of royalties. So no matter what, it sounded as though the producers, in your mind, were getting intellectual royalties from intellectual property ownership, even if they sold and transferred the rights to their master, because there are 2 copyrights to every beat. One is the composition, one is the master. You're still paying the master royalties, and they're retaining their full 50% of the composition ownership. So to me, I'm not listening to you and saying, damn, that's crazy. You're trying to take people's intellectual property rights. My question to you then is, how do you reconcile the way you did business with reading a comment on Instagram from a rapper saying, I'm not paying a producer shit if I already paid for the beat?
Well, I think largely I'm making the assumption when I see comments like that, they don't understand what they're talking about. Like, I don't think they understand the difference between the 2 copyrights. So I think that's largely where the confusion is. They think that, when you say half ownership, they're thinking that now they got to give you half of the money that's coming in through DistroKid or TuneCore or whatever. I think that is the biggest like piece of where you're not on the same page. I think that's, you know, their understanding when that's not what you're suggesting. I don't think.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it is just a matter of them not knowing. I mean, it comes down to the unfortunate fact that whether you're a rapper, a songwriter, or producer, chances are you don't understand how intellectual property laws affect you. That's not an excuse. I mean, if you're an adult and you have a normal intellect, you know, not knowing isn't an excuse. You can pick up a book, you can figure it out. And so getting hostile, getting preemptively combative about it is not justified just by your own ignorance. But how do we have these conversations when there is this natural tendency to become hostile or combative or defensive about it?
I mean, I think that you just I would just clarify and make sure that they have that understanding. Like, look, I'm not talking about the royalties that come through DistroKid or TuneCore. However, there should be a conversation about that. Maybe not at 50%, and maybe it is at 50. Like, if you're a producer that works with an artist like the whole way through, like if you're a producer that works with an artist, like you guys are coming up with concepts, you're helping like coming up ideas with the videos, and like you're really working on this project 50-50, then shit, split everything 50-50, right? Or if you're a producer that has like a really big platform and like you're gonna be pushing the music, you know, just like the artist is pushing the music, and your platform's way bigger than the artist, then maybe that is, you know, 50-50. But those are kind of more so the exceptions or more of the minority when it comes to how I see artists work with producers. Most artists are, you know, hey, send me a pack of beats. Thank you. I'm going to use these ones. Yeah. Thank you. And, you know, so maybe it's a more of like a, maybe what's more fair, depending on if there is an advance, you know, being sent for the beat. You know, maybe it's 50% publishing and like 20% on the royalties from DistroKid and TuneCore. But the other royalty, like for the 50% of the publishing, like they collect that on their own. Like they don't need the artists to send those out. They used to, because mechanical royalties, you know, were the artist or the label's responsibility to calculate, but that was attached to like downloads and physical sales. So if you don't have that many downloads or physical sales, all the mechanicals are coming straight from these streaming services. So, you know, the artist doesn't necessarily have to report to the producers on a quarterly or whatever basis, because the producer, as long as it's registered right, you know, with your PRO and with your publishing administrator, you collect those on your own. And that's separate from the master royalties that are coming through TuneCore and DistroKid. But my suggestion would be give 50% of the publishing to the producer, come to an agreement on the master side, use DistroKid, put the splits in the system so that the artist is not tasked with having to account or report to the producer, and just do it that way. So the producer starts getting paid on a monthly basis. Everybody's happy. Everything's transparent. No problems. That's how we did it with 1 week notice, because we had like, you know, we probably had about 9 different people that needed to be paid. So we put the splits into DistroKid. Haven't touched it since. Haven't had anybody hit me up and say, hey, Dame, where's my money? You know, they just needed to sign up with DistroKid. Everybody got their payment. Everybody should be happy. And that's what I suggest artists and producers negotiate for themselves.
I do feel as though there's this kind of culture of sole ownership, especially among unsigned and independent artists who are just starting out or who don't really understand the music business. And I think part of that way of thinking is a indirect maybe result of a lot of the ongoing conversations about artists taking back their independence. So when we hear about somebody like Taylor Swift or Prince fighting to get their masters back, I think an artist who doesn't really understand what that means and what it entails, it starts thinking, as an artist, I need to own 100% of my stuff. And if I don't own 100% of my stuff, I'm a slave to somebody else. And that transfers over into their agreements with producers. So it becomes, rather than a matter of self-empowerment, self-knowledge, and independence, because you can, independent labels are still based on sharing ownership of things. Independent doesn't mean you don't share with your collaborators. So then this culture becomes, rather than one based on education, it becomes based on being anti-sharing. And I see that sentiment floating around, and it's not just rappers, it's producers too. A lot of producers take on this super defensive, combative attitude. If I'm working with a rapper, F that, they got to pay up this. Like, come on, guys. We're making art together. We can come to some sort of agreement. That's how this works. Well, it's not a war.
And I'll extend that beyond producers. I think that, I think the independent mindset or the ownership mindset has been misunderstood. Like, because you have to give a percentage to a manager, you should give a percentage to a booking agent, you got to give a percentage to
a lawyer,
sometimes a lawyer, sometimes a business manager. Like, and I've seen artists really hurt their own business or really prevent it from growing because they can't get quality people on their team because they want to hold on to everything. They don't want to give a percentage to every. And I'm not saying you should just give out percentages willy-nilly, but that doesn't mean you don't own your business, right? You still own your business. Sometimes it makes sense to bring on people that are going to help you expand your business or protect your business. And that comes at a cost because they have a business that they're running as well. So don't be so closed off because you heard Nipsey preach about ownership in some 60-second Instagram and you didn't quite understood what he was talking about, because he had similar partners, right? Like, he was signed to Atlantic. He might have owned his masters, but I guarantee you he was giving up a percentage of something somewhere, right? Like a percentage of his world. Atlantic doesn't work for free. Atlantic was taking a percentage of something. I think he had a manager. His manager was taking a percentage. Like, the people.
Yeah, he had producers that he was working with, and they were happy with the situation. Shout out Mike and Keys. So it's just. Yeah, I think people are perverting this idea of independence just because they hear it and they don't research it. They just come up with their own interpretation of it, and that ends up becoming more of a selfish sort of interpretation.
It's these 60-second Instagram clips, man. People go to Instagram and they're like, okay, I watched this video for 60 seconds. All right, cool. Got my PhD in publishing. Just heard Carl Folks talk about publishing for 60 seconds. So I'm good. I got it now. And I'll even take this beyond music because I'm on Twitter, talking about the pandemic or whatnot. And like, I got friends, and I'm not bragging or anything, but like, I have friends that are actual neurosurgeon scientists, like actual.
It's true. I met one of them.
Actual, so Tommy is actually a transplant surgeon. But I have another friend who's an actual brain surgeon going to war with dumbass people on Twitter telling him what he's dedicated his life to. I'm not saying a degree is everything, but if your knowledge is backed up by some dumbass conservative website that just got put up yesterday versus somebody that is dedicated their life to a particular topic, has multiple degrees, advanced degrees, and is living, breathing it on an everyday basis, you should probably shut the fuck up and listen. That's what you should do. Like, do not go to war with people like that. Like, just listen or ask a question.
let's end on that note. And since you brought his name up, I'll try to get Carl folks. I want to get a couple of lawyers in here to talk about this stuff too, because I do think this is a conversation worth extending just beyond the conversation of producers getting royalties. I mean, this whole independence mindset is as good as the person who interprets it, and so we can maybe repair some damage by having that conversation. Anyway, musicentrepreneurclub.com. Join now. Use code MEC podcast. Also, Collab for the Crown is still going on. Collabforthecrown.com. We extended the deadline. If you're watching this, way later, like weeks after this podcast was published, sorry, you're out of luck. But if you're watching it right away.
My bad. Let me just real quick. So I didn't want to extend it, but King Crooked suggested that we extend it a week. So we did. I know some people are mad about that. I'm sorry. During this additional week, what we're going to try to do is promote more of the entries through our IG story and maybe even on Twitter, to try to, give an added benefit to the people that did get their entries in on time. But we won't be extending it another week. So I can guarantee that. So it's definitely going to end on May 10th. If you don't know what Collab for the Crown is, please go to collabforthecrown.com. It's a rap contest where you could potentially win $1,000 and a collaboration with King Crooked.
All right. We'll catch you on the next episode. Peace.